The tie in the NFL is a rare and odd occurrence. Since overtime was instituted in 1974, 24 games have ended in a tie. Today I want to tell you about Daniel Carlson here, who is infamous for missing 2 field goals in overtime, leading to a tie with their hated rival, the Packers. Many consider this to be the saddest overtime ever, but let's take a deeper dive into the history of the dreaded tie.
It's all on him for a Vikings win. He missed it again!
Starting in 1974, the NFL introduced a single sudden death overtime period. The first overtime game ever between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Denver Broncos resulted in a tie on a missed field goal from Broncos kicker Jim Turner.
Turner missed, and now just 3 minutes remained. Neither team could gain even one more first down, and though they had played a full extra period, the game still ended in a tie.
And just a quick note, we're talking about overtime ties, so anything before 1974, all those ties, we're not talking about those. There were plenty of them. In fact, 0-0 ties, quite a few of them. But we're talking about overtime era ties. In our search for the saddest overtime game, the first real example we have of a sad OT game came in December 1982, when the then Baltimore Colts tied with the Green Bay Packers. The 1982 season was shortened to 9 games because of a players' strike. This game took place in Week 7 of that 9-week season. Coming into this game, the Colts were 0-6. They would go on to lose their last 2, ending the season at 0-8-1. I mean, the games they played weren't even close. Back-to-back weeks, they were shut out by the Jets 37-0, and then the Bills 20-0. Heading into the fourth quarter of this game, the Colts were down 20-6. They mounted a great comeback to force OT. In 1989, Chiefs kicker Nick Lowry, who was one of the most accurate kickers that season, missed a game winner in regulation and in overtime. This was likely due to sloppy conditions at Cleveland Municipal Stadium, which has since been imploded. This is the stadium the Browns play in now. But this was odd because another tie game did not occur for 8 years until 1997 with the Eagles and the Ravens. Our second candidate for the saddest overtime game has to go to the 2002 matchup between the Steelers and the Falcons. Atlanta made a 17-point comeback to push the game into overtime. Atlanta attempted a 56-yard field goal attempt with 7 seconds left in OT. The kick was blocked and recovered by the Steelers at the 50. The Steelers threw a Hail Mary to star wideout Plexico Burress, who caught the pass but was marked short at the 1-yard line.
Plexico Burress caught it. His body was in the end zone, Sam. The ball wasn't. Oh, this is unbelievable. Now they may review this.
Adored Commissioner Roger Goodell.
I can't believe you guys are booing the Cowboys. Come on.
Along with the owners of the NFL, passed a new overtime rule in 2012. The new overtime format got rid of the initial sudden death policy and allowed for each team to possess the ball once, unless the team that possesses the ball first scores a touchdown on their opening possession. I am a huge Bengals fan, and the first game I ever went to in Cincinnati also happened to be one of the first ties that really implemented this new rule. The Bengals scored a field goal on their opening possession, and the Panthers, under the new rule, were given a possession, which they capped off with a field goal of their own, tying the game at 37 apiece. The Bengals' final drive ended with a missed 36-yard chip shot by Mike Nugent. Just a side note, I think it is really interesting how the tie is perceived by players. In the 4 major American sports, only hockey has ties, which occur quite frequently. It's the only outcome in which there is no clear winner and loser. As you see from the Bengals and Panthers reactions and other players' reactions from this video, like Plexico Burris' reaction, nobody is happy. Nobody knows how to feel. In this scenario, the best the Panthers could hope for, barring an improbable blocked field goal or botched snap return for a touchdown, was a tie. Still, it's not a good feeling. It's a very okay feeling. And really, in this scenario for the Bengals here, it feels more like a loss than anything, considering they had the chance to seal the game. And that day in the stadium, you could definitely feel the sense of defeat among the fans and the players.
In 2002, nobody knows how to react. Eagles 13, Bengals 13. It's over.
Well, I've never been a part of a tie. Never even knew that was in the rule book.
Now I present to you a prime candidate for the saddest OT game of all time. This game is considered by a lot of people to be the worst overtime game of all time, and it ended in a 6-6 tie between the Seahawks and the Cardinals, the lowest scoring tie game since overtime was introduced.
And make some contact with him.
24-yard attempt. Oh, he hits the upright. It's no good.
Cardinals kicker Chandler Canzaro missed the easiest 24-yard field goal, but still 3:19 was left on the clock, so not a whole lot to worry about.
That's the reason. I'm just telling you, it has been a nightmare.
With 9 seconds left, the Seahawks set up Steven Hauschka for a 28-yard field goal.
It's been incidental.
John Ryan to hold. And he misses it.
Hauschka missed the chip shot field goal, and you can see Chandler Canzaro was very relieved.
Hauschka has made tonight. He has gone up and fooled around with the turf and felt.
Another candidate for the saddest OT game of all time is one we talked about earlier between the Vikings and the Packers just this past season. Packers kicker Mason Crosby was a perfect 5 for 5 on the day and made his 52-yard game winner, but Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer called a timeout right before the snap. On his second attempt, Zimmer's icing attempt worked as Crosby missed left. In overtime, Vikings kicker Daniel Carlson, who missed a 48-yarder in regulation, would go on to miss 2 field goals in OT, one from 49 and the other from 35.
So any Packer score now, it's all on him for a Vikings win. He missed it again.
Before we go over the saddest overtime game of all time, I just want to talk about overtime changes and its impact on the game and on ties in general. The Packers have had the most overtime games, 6 of them, and have hosted 4 of them at Lambeau Field. The Vikings and Eagles are tied with the second most ties at 4 apiece, just tying Green Bay's record of 4 home tie games. For some reason, whether it be a smaller sample size considering the new rule change has only been in place for the past 6 seasons, or an increase in offensive efficiency, the average number of overtime games per season has greatly increased since the rule change in 2012. Oddly enough, the previous 6 seasons before the rule change, 2006 to 2011, the average number of OT games in those seasons was 13.3, a season pretty much the exact same as the average from 74 to 2011. Next, we want to look at the impact of the new overtime rules. With the new OT rules, as we talked about a lot, after a first possession made field goal, the other team gets the chance to possess the ball. In these scenarios, the team that made a field goal on their first possession won 13 times, lost 6 times, and ended up tying 3 times. Before 2012, all of these would have been wins for that team that kicked the field goal first. In 2017, overtime rules were again changed, with the length of the period decreasing from 15 to 10 minutes. Obviously, the percentage of ties increased after the major rule change in 2012, but just in the past 2 seasons with the 10-minute overtime period, 8.3% of overtime games ended in ties, compared to 6% from 2012 to 2016. Finally, I present to you now what is arguably the saddest tie game in NFL overtime history. On October 24th, 1983, the then St. Louis Cardinals faced the New York Giants on Monday night. Meet Neil O'Donoghue, place kicker for the St. Louis Cardinals. A very average NFL kicker, not great but a serviceable kicker for the time period. Early in overtime, O'Donoghue attempted a makeable but difficult 45-yard field goal.
45-yard attempt. The man that will put it down is Benny Parent. The center is Randy Clark. No way.
His kick was way off, but, that's okay. They still had plenty of time left in overtime. In fact, on their next possession, they drove into the red zone and set up O'Donohue for a 19 or 20-yard field goal. Still, the distance was roughly the same as an extra point. In that season, 1983, O'Donohue was 45 for 47 on extra point attempts, 95.7% that season.
You can't get this, though. I mean, you got to be able to. Well, maybe it's a fake. 19-yard attempt. Neil O'Donohue. Oh, he missed it.
It didn't even come close! If there was a net back in 1983, you would have missed it! What is wrong with you, Neil? Oh my God! Anyways, Cardinals start driving again after they get the ball back, play good defense. They get down to their own territory, and they're forced into a fourth down. And at this point, they should have just brought the offense out there and gone for it. But they thought, you know what, we'll give O'Donohue another shot. We'll let him have a 42-yard field goal attempt. Now, looking at his performance in this game, you would think, why the hell are they doing this? But the week prior, O'Donohue made a 52-yard field goal, which broke a Cardinals record for the longest field goal made by a Cardinals kicker. So it's still sensible to think that he can make this, 42 yards, 10 yards shorter. He's already missed twice, maybe he'll get it together.
Oh, no. Poor baby.
He was literally aiming for the bottle on the Michelob sign. Now, you might be thinking, kickers have missed 3 or more field goals in a game before, but never has it all been in overtime. Here's a chart of kickers who have missed 3 or more field goals in a game since 2008. There's some bad misses on there, but nothing compared to O'Donohue's disaster. The shortest missed field goal, the 26-yarder, was blocked, so the shortest one on the list that was actually missed was 31 yards. Still 11 yards longer than O'Donohue's 20-yarder. Even then, most of these misses are longer than O'Donohue's 42 and 45-yard attempts. There's several 50s on here, and one's longer than 45. And it's not like O'Donohue couldn't make these field goals. He wasn't as efficient as today's kickers, but in his 1983 season, excluding the 2 40-yard misses in this game, he was 8 for 11 from 40-plus, including 2 50-plus yarders. In his 1984 season, his best statistical season, he was 50% from 40 to 49 yards and 94.1% from extra point range. So taking these raw stats into account, he had a 1.5% chance of missing all 3 of these field goals, and somehow he did it. For all these reasons, that is why I have crowned Neil O'Donohue and the St. Louis Cardinals as the saddest tie game of all time.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.